July 4th, Mars slams into Uranus at 3 degrees 52 minutes of Gemini, and this is not soft astrology. This is a collision inside the mind, inside the message, inside the identity you have been performing on autopilot. And 3 messages are already moving toward you. 1 arrives through your body, a restlessness that hits before your mind agrees. 1 arrives through another person or a situation that refuses to stay quiet. And 1 arrives from the future version of you that is done waiting for permission. This transit does not ask if you are ready. It interrupts the sentence you have been using to stay inside an old life. Mid-word, mid-breath, mid-excuse. Something breaks tomorrow, and it breaks in exactly the place you have been avoiding. Here is why this particular collision refuses to be ignored. Mars and Uranus meet roughly every 2 years. That part is ordinary. But in Gemini, they have not touched since August of 1945. And before that, April of 1861. That is close to an 80-year gap. You are not standing inside a routine spark. You are standing inside a generational door that has opened only twice in living memory. And here is what Gemini does with that charged, volatile energy. It does not stay in the body. It travels through words, through messages, through decisions and sudden realizations and the signals firing across your own nervous system. The shockwave becomes language. It becomes the thing you finally say, or the thing you can no longer unhear. The conjunction turns exact before sunrise on July 4th. So the pressure is not coming. It is already here, tonight, building toward that dawn peak with the window stretching 72 hours beyond it. This is not about what changes in the world. This is about what can no longer be said, agreed to, or pretended inside one single life. And because it lands in Gemini, it lands somewhere specific in yours. And here is where it stops being about the sky and starts being about you. Because if you have felt it landing somewhere specific, you already know. The sleep that breaks at the same restless hour, the mental electricity that will not switch off, the urge to send a message you keep deleting, or to finally block a name you have circled for months. Old memories surfacing without warning, a quiet irritation with connections that never quite name themselves, that drain you without ever declaring what they are. Notice something stranger. The old version of you has gone quiet, not peaceful, just out of arguments. It no longer has the language to justify the smaller life it once defended. And underneath that, a specific exhaustion, the tiredness of being loved only in private, accepted only when you translate yourself, included only when you make yourself less complicated to hold. That exhaustion is not weakness, it is data. None of this is malfunction. None of it is you failing to cope. It is the old timeline losing its grip, one loosened thread at a time. What comes next puts words to it. 3 of them. 3 of them, arriving in sequence, each cutting through a different layer of the life you have been holding together. The first message will not come as a thought. It comes through your body, through your nervous system, as a sudden refusal. A moment where you open your mouth to repeat the old sentence, the excuse, the apology, the agreement you always make, and something inside you simply will not let it out. That is message 1. The second arrives from outside you, a conversation, a text, a memory that returns without warning, or a silence that finally becomes its own answer. It breaks the spell of not knowing. After it lands, ambiguity is no longer available to you. The third is not information at all. It is instruction. It reaches backward from the version of you that has already crossed onto the new timeline, telling you the exact move to make. But here is what matters most. The first message is not the loudest one. It is the one you have been quieting for months. So understand the timing, because this is not a slow drift you can meet whenever you feel ready. Tonight, July 3rd, is the pressure peak, the charge building right before it breaks. The exact conjunction lands at dawn on July 4th. One moment. A detonation with a specific hour. Then the window opens. 72 hours running through July 6th. Messages, decisions, sudden exits, sudden openings, they may arrive before that window closes. And Gemini is the channel. That matters, because the shockwave, does not travel as a feeling. It travels as words, a text, a dream, a memory returning uninvited, a sentence you suddenly cannot finish. Mars heats the channel, Uranus electrifies it, so what reaches you comes fast, and sideways, through the last place you were watching. Do not wait to feel ready. This energy does not need your readiness. It needs your attention, on your body, your connections, your choices. The first message is already moving, and here is where it begins. Not in the sky, but inside you. The first message does not arrive as inspiration. It does not knock politely, and it does not sound like a voice. It arrives as physical refusal. The old sentence, the one you have said 1,000 times, "I'm fine, I can wait. This version of me is safer," stops working in your body before it stops working in your mind. Your chest tightens around it. The words go dry in your mouth. Something in you simply will not perform the line anymore. Understand what is actually breaking. It is not your life. It is the story you built to survive inside a life that was never fully yours. The role handed to you by family, by culture, by religion, by the quiet need to stay legible to people who were not really paying attention anyway. The self you assembled to be acceptable. The shape you learned to hold so you would not lose the room. And this is the part almost no one names correctly. The old timeline is not failing you now. It is expiring. There is a difference. Failure would mean it should have worked. Expiration means it already did its job. It carried you this far, and the period is simply over. So let it feel like grief first. Because that story, even when it cost you everything, also protected something real. And you are allowed to mourn it. But this message breaks only the spell inside you. The second one arrives through someone else. And here is how the second message moves. It does not rise from inside you. It comes across the space between you and someone else. Mars conjunct Uranus in Gemini rules the wire, the word, the sudden transmission. Gemini is the sign of the message itself, and Mars-Uranus is the charge that finally forces it through. So watch the channels. Someone may send the text they have been drafting and deleting for months. Someone may call. Someone may finally say the thing they could never let themselves say out loud. But listen closely, because this message does not always arrive as speech. Sometimes it arrives as a silence that suddenly becomes legible, a distance that stops being confusing and starts being an answer. Sometimes it is a label that can no longer stay undefined. Sometimes it is an old connection resurfacing with the truth attached this time. And it will not always be romantic. It may come through a friend, a sibling, a chosen family member, a collaborator, someone you loved in a space that was never named. Too complicated, too hidden, too unsafe to define. This transit reaches straight into that unnamed space and turns on the light. Here is the part you must brace for. This message may not give you what you wanted. It may give you what frees you. Mars-Uranus does not deal in soft reunions. It deals in honest ones. And that honesty is exactly what opens the third. And that honesty leads to the third message, the one that does not arrive as feeling or as truth, but as instruction. This one is different. The first cracked something open inside you. The second came across the space between you and someone else. But this third message comes from further away, from the version of you who has already crossed into the new timeline, and who is now reaching back with a single, specific command. It sounds like this: send the message, stop replying, publish the work, say the name, set the boundary, leave the room where you are consistently made smaller, not a paragraph, not a plan, one clean move. Because here is the mechanism Mars-Uranus refuses to hide. The old timeline does not survive through your mistakes. It survives through your hesitation. It feeds on the delay, the drafting, the waiting for a perfect moment that this transit will never grant. The new timeline opens the instant you act without permission, and the action is often quieter than you expect. Choosing the space where you never have to translate yourself. Choosing the connection that does not need you to be less visible. Letting the new identity become real through movement, not just private awareness. Feel this clearly. The future you is not waiting for you to be brave. It is waiting for you to be done. Done negotiating, done explaining, done defending a story that already ended. And the moment you are done, something goes still. And here is the piece most people miss. It matters that all of this is happening in Gemini. Mars and Uranus collide often enough. But when that collision lands in Gemini, it does not simply shake the ground beneath you. It shatters the language you have used to describe that ground. Gemini rules names, labels, messages, and the stories through which you build and defend who you are. So the break does not arrive as an earthquake. It arrives as words. The label that no longer fits. The explanation you can no longer give with a straight face. The name you can finally use for yourself. The silence that suddenly costs more than speaking ever would. And this is why the timing carries such weight. Mars and Uranus have not met here in Gemini since August of 1945. And before that, 1861. Each time, an old order lost the words that held it together, and something new demanded to be named. That rhythm returns roughly every 80 years. You are standing inside one of those hinges now. Uranus in Gemini does not only free you, it rewrites the story, and once the language breaks, the old timeline has no structure left to stand in. So what does it actually feel like in the days after the words let go? It feels quieter than you expect. That is the first sign. Some conversations will simply feel finished, not because they ended in a fight, but because they have already given you everything they were ever going to give. You will reach for them out of habit, and then notice you no longer need them to continue. Some people will feel farther away. Do not read this as abandonment. It is calibration. The new timeline is not cruel, it is honest, and honesty quietly rearranges the distance between people without asking your permission. Then one path becomes strangely obvious, not because everything lines up perfectly, but because staying where you were no longer feels believable to your own body. The alternative stops being an option and starts being a fiction. And for many of you, visibility stops feeling like a risk and starts feeling like a direction. This is not fearlessness. It is the moment the cost of hiding finally rises above the cost of being seen. That is the threshold. Now you decide whether to step through it. So, here it is. Tomorrow, when Mars meets Uranus at 3 degrees of Gemini, nothing arrives to punish you. Something arrives to deliver you. The three messages, the rupture inside, the truth outside, the instruction to move, are already in motion. This was never here to frighten you. It came to free the version of you that was never meant to survive by staying quiet. So step through. Comment new timeline if you are ready to receive the message, speak the truth, and stop negotiating with a life that already ended. If this found you now, follow. The next transmission is already coming.